They tell us that the world is at our fingertips, that we can achieve anything we want because we have AI, the internet, and so much more information than previous generations. But I don't think that is true. I believe that the older generation had it easier than us. And I will get into why I think that. Um, but I really don't like the notion that we, the current generation of young men, have it easier than the previous generation. Um, Maybe in terms of tools that we have, yeah, we are more advanced in terms of the technology we have. Okay, that might be true, but I think the most important thing that gives men strength is missing today, and that's identity. And I believe it was way easier before to build a good identity for yourself than it's nowadays. And I will get into the reasons why later, and also what I think is the only viable strategy that we young men have nowadays. Um, but let me get into why I think we have it harder and in what way we have it harder. Don't get me wrong, I believe that men in the past or in the past generation also had it very hard. And they had it hard in terms of physical labor or physically harder lives. I don't think they had it mentally hard. I think we take that by far. Like our generation takes the mentally hard part by far. I think mental illness is the biggest threat to our generation nowadays, and it's because the world changed in such ways that it pushed it that way. And let me get into why. So the previous generation, right? They had to work maybe 60 hours a week, during the industrial age, where they had to do a lot of hard physical labor. That was hard. Don't get me wrong. That was hard, and I understand if the older generation tells us that we have it so much easier in that regard. We're just sitting at our in our homes, right, doing home office in front of our PC. Okay, yeah, I give them that. I give them that. You had a physically harder life, but mentally we have it way harder. It's just like that. It is really like that, because even in the industrial age, what did you do? You went to work, and you talked to people in real life. Like we do this maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but you had that every day. You had that every day, and you also had every day time to pause, to take your time, to not be bombarded by information. And when you have time to think and are not bombarded by outside information, external information, it is easier for you to build an identity, to know yourself better. And I think knowing yourself better is the most important thing for a good life. Knowing your identity, in my opinion, is probably the best thing you could have in your life. And it was just easier to achieve in previous generations because they had more time to think about that stuff. They didn't have as much information as we have nowadays, being bombarded by it. And they had a lot of communication with others. They met a lot of different people. Maybe we meet a lot of different people online, but it is different when you have a communication with somebody in real life and you're actively participating in the conversation than watching a YouTube video where somebody tells you what is happening, what is the solution. The thing that I do right now, you will probably listen to this and you will understand it, but you will not have inherited it in yourself, in your mind, because you are not really actively talking to me. You're just listening. And they had that in previous generations. In previous generation, they had conversations. They showed emotions. When somebody said something controversial, they would get mad at them. We don't really. I mean, we do have conversations in real life. Don't get me wrong, but in previous generation it was just so much more. You had to interact with so many people in everyday life. You had to talk in real life and not talk into a microphone like I'm doing right now and talking to this camera. So that's the reason why I believe we have it mentally way harder than the previous generation. And what I believe also is that having mental strain is way more painful than having physical uh, pain. We just have to look at it from a sports perspective. What do the top athletes say? They say it's not the technique, it's not the your fitness that decides winning games. It's the mental part. And if the mental part is fucked up in a competition, in life, then everything else will collapse. So that's why I believe that that our current generation as young men has it the hardest ever, because our mind is not there, so we cannot go out and face difficult situations, because to face difficult situations you have to know who you are. You have to know where your boundaries are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you stand for, what are your values. And at least for me, I believe the game is so rigged in terms of finding your identity, because you go online and he says these are the values you have to be through. Let's just give an example. Okay, you have to build a business in your 20s and live a great life, travel around the world. um, you get so many values from outside that you cannot make up your own values. So what is the solution to this, in my opinion? I thought about this very hard, and I think that the only viable strategy that we have nowadays is to realize that we have it harder and accept it, and don't let others tell you that it's not, or the older generation tell you that we have it so easy. No, you do have it harder than the previous generation. Economically, our buying power is ass, so accept that. That puts more pressure on you to, be economically more well off. So that's one pressure. And because we are not so well off economically, the dating market is for us as too. And this is not a hate against women. I understand women. Before, dating was transactional, and I don't like that. I like that we everybody gained more freedom. We have the freedom of choice. Uh, we women can decide who they want to marry, whatever, who they want to sleep with. That's fine. That's better. Freedom, in my opinion, is always better. The problem is, with that freedom, a lot of problems came. Um, so this puts us men, and also women, but us men too, in a bad position in terms of the dating market. So economically, it is hard. Dating wise, finding a partner, it is way harder than before. So you do have to accept that we have it harder, and do not let older generations tell you you're lazy or whatever. No, you have it harder, and that's how it is. So, what is the only viable strategy that you have in today's world? I already said that. Except that we have it harder. We have that now. And the next thing I believe is to know that you have to do more than previous generations. I thought about it deeply, and this could be toxic, right? This whole hustle culture thing, and I believe it has a bad part, and the bad part is to, that they value money, status, and women, but you can also hustle in other kind of things. You can hustle your social connections. You can hustle values, I believe. finding out what your values are. You can hustle that. You can hustle everything. You can learn anything. That's the thing. And I think instead of putting effort or hustling to reach, money and status and whatever woman, we have to hustle for finding out what our values are, for strengthening our mental mind. And you already know what that means. That means, meditating more, doing all the things that YouTube already recommends to you, um, for example, journaling and other stuff. Um, so hustle in that area, and not hustle to reach, money or status or whatever. So I think that's the second thing. So accept that we have it harder, and then the next thing is to hustle in the right areas, that I just named. Okay, and then the most important thing is that your main goal should be to find your identity, to find what really is fun to you. And to do that, you have to try out a lot of stuff. Maybe even more, maybe you have to even try out more stuff than the previous generation, because they didn't have all the options displayed to them. And if you have so many options displayed in the dating market, and what you want to do, then you're always going to feel you took the wrong decision when you decide for one decision. So you have to try out a lot of stuff, because there's a lot of options, and really wait for the opportunity that something makes you feel really good. And I think this is the biggest tip, or the biggest thing I came up with, is to be patient and try a lot of stuff, and wait for an opportunity. I believe the world changed from, searching a good job, to searching or waiting for an opportunity. So our lives should not be like there were in previous generations, where you find one job and you do it for the rest of your life. No, it has to be different paths, because the only thing that is rewarded nowadays are taking advantage of opportunities. That's the only thing that is rewarded today. The one that takes opportunities nowadays has so much leverage, it catapults him way ahead. So you cannot. I mean, if your identity is to, have a stable life, okay, then maybe you can go for that. But I think you will at some point feel the economical pressure, or whatever, the pressure of nowadays worlds. So you have to live a life where you try out a lot of stuff, to make it possible to be faced with a lot of opportunities, and then you have to realize those opportunities and take advantage of them. And this is completely different from hustle culture. Don't get like, I don't want to go into this, into this direction of you have to hustle for money and whatever status. No, when I talk about opportunity, it could be that, you go this way, you go the right way, and you find something, an opportunity that makes you feel very good. For example, let's say you start fishing. Okay, I had that phase. I tried a lot of stuff in my life. I started to fish. I didn't like it, to be honest. But let's say you started to fish, and you meet people, people with them, that are very different to the people you know now, and you connect with them way better. So there would be one opportunity, and then you have to realize that made you feel good, and pursue that. So this would be an opportunity in the social environment. Another opportunity would be you start a sport, let's say, for example, BJJ, and you never tasted competition or whatever, and you tasted for the first time competition, and you really like it. So, what kind of opportunity is that? That's a values opportunity. It's a value that you really like that you didn't like before. And I know this bullshit of stepping out of your comfort zone to try out stuff uh, is was said so many times, but it is true. To try out stuff, you have to do things that you have never done before. So I believe in our 20s, we men have to do more chaotic stuff than the men in previous generations. That's, I think, the only viable strategy to deal with this pressure from different sides, economic pressure, pressure on the dating market, value, identity loss. Like, I think the only thing to confront these problems are to to find opportunities, and to find opportunities you have to live a not stable life, but a life that where you go from up and down, and different ways. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe somebody can help me more in the comments. I'm thinking about this very hard usually when I'm lying in bed. So I'm just trying to find the best strategy for somebody like me who's in his 20s. And that's the solution that I've come up with up till now.